There's a House bill right now going through Congress in Utah that wants to require home buyers to sign an affidavit saying they will live in the property within 90 days. Every single home that's sold in the state of Utah.
I think it's 151.
151.
From the Blue Form Media Studios, this is the 435 Podcast, the pulse of Southern Utah.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the 435 Podcast. I'm your host. Today, we sit down with Blake and Jeff and me, locals, talking about local issues. We hit DOGE, statewide DOGE. Does Utah need a DOGE? We talk about that, and then we just keep going from there. Hope you enjoy this episode, guys. Big shout out to our sponsors, FS Coffee Company, Tuacahn Amphitheater, Tech Ridge, Real Estate 435. Cue the ad. Enjoy the episode, guys. We'll see you out there. You know, this might sound crazy, but I hate real estate agents. And after being one myself for the last 10 years, I know the good ones from the bad ones. If you're thinking about buying, selling, or investing in real estate here in Southern Utah, we want you to interview us for the job. Go to realestate435.com and give us a call. We promise you're going to love us. We've been talking about, does Utah need a DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency? And Blake, your position is that yes, we need it.
Yeah. I mean, we were talking too, we'll go into this, so I'll open it up for you to say what you said about the federal level. But the federal level, it's like inherently becomes so big, small federal government, states and the people have the power is kind of the way America should operate, according to most, I think. But
yeah,
according to the way that it was set up.
Okay, according to the original. So yeah, I think it's way more debatable at a state level, right? Should we have a DOGE at a state level? I think each state should choose that, and if the people are being heard, right? I know a lot of Californians are not happy with the state government and the waste that's going on there.
Yeah, they're recalling. They're pushing forward with a recall on Newsom, which they've tried 6 times previously. So we'll see if this goes through. But
I think it's got more traction than ever. Will it go through?
I don't know if it's gotten more traction, but people are still pissed about it.
I think it feels like it's got more. I've heard about it more, especially after the LA fires and how all the buffoonery there. So yeah, I think
this is the thing about the algorithm. I know I'm taking us back off a different topic, but the algorithm is telling you that it's got more traction, and you're like, wait a minute, or did you just not see the traction? It was the same traction, but you just didn't notice it.
Was I not plugged into that algorithm?
You were not, but because of the fires, now all of a sudden everybody's got this plug into what's going on in California.
Yeah, more reason to pay attention.
So now we're hearing about it more.
Yes,
but that's the crazy thing about man, this is weird. It goes deep. You go back to the fundamentals of the way we're a constitutional republic. We're not even, a democracy isn't actually how we're described in any way, shape, or form.
We have democratic processes.
We are a
constitutional republic.
Exactly.
That values
because
the
they
rights of the
saw
individual.
that the whims of the mob can be easily swayed through communication and media,
or
right?
Suppressed.
And none of that, or suppressed, and none of that's really changed. Like back in the day, there was 5 newspapers everybody got their information from.
Yeah, like
it was just as easy. It was easier back then to control what the narrative was and what attention was back then than it is today, right?
Well, yeah, we have different tools that they use.
So we just have different tools.
There's effectiveness. Like war has always been around, even though the tools have changed. Like warfare is still at its core warfare. Same thing with
if
subversion.
There's not a perfected, all that has needed to be perfected has been perfected in war. We just use different things.
Yes.
They just look differently.
Yeah,
but the concepts are the same.
Like,
the way it's fought is the same.
Coercion, blackmail, subversion, covert operations, all those things. They've all been done throughout history.
And they've gotten better, I think, at the covert stuff, like looking at USAID and like what fundamentally they were doing as a checkbook for the CIA to be able to run operations through the CIA without authorization of the president, because it didn't go through the US, it didn't go through the CIA, it went through technically Congress.
Yes.
Right. And so for the appropriations to go to these federal agencies and the misuse that once it got to them, basically got to spend on whatever and whoever, and the president didn't even know about it. It was a need to know basis. The president didn't even know about it.
And the point is, this isn't new to human history.
Yeah.
The tools and the methods just change based off culture, time, technology.
So taking it back though to the attention on like Utah, it's easy to get distracted looking at what's going on at the federal level. So I like this article because it poses an interesting question: does Utah need a DOGE? And I think we always need a DOGE of some capacity, and people need to be more plugged in to where the money is being spent.
Right.
But I also think that because of the legislature, the size of our legislature, we have a better handle on, each individual congressperson has a better handle on what exactly the money is getting spent toward, because it's right there at the local level, right? They're
Utah.
in Utah. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, is that I think the DOGE element to it is functioning properly at the state level. I just don't think it's functioning at the federal level because, which we were talking about, $1 trillion, people can't conceptually understand how much money is that really, and what is the impact that, 500 billion, what that actually can do in the world in production, like what can it actually create? And I don't think it's running wild at Utah like it is in the federal government. Mm-hmm. And I think it just continues to reemphasize, as an individual citizen, you are the DOGE of Utah. Like the individual citizen is, because they have access to a lot of this stuff, and their Congress people do have access to a lot of this stuff.
I would say the same for almost every state too, but like what level of involvement is the citizen of the state like really, giving a shit, right? Like what are they caring about? And so, the more you care about it, the more say you will have, the more backlash that a politician will receive from his voter base,
squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Yeah. And so if you're aware of it, I would say yes, but that's interesting. Here's my general thought is at the federal level, absolutely we need a DOGE. And we're seeing what's happening right now with US aid and all that stuff. And then at the state level, I would say this, like I said earlier before we started, I don't care what people's political opinions are. If someone wants to have a discussion with me, my new filter is, can you tell me what lobbying is in your own words? And if they don't have a good understanding of like, hey, we're a constitutional republic, I don't care if someone leans liberal or conservative. I'm like, do you understand like what we are? Or are you brainwashed? Are you allowing the algorithm to shape your knowledge? Because we're all affected by it, but that's a good measuring stick. I'm like, hey, do you know what lobbying is? And if they can't speak to it, like astutely, then I'm like, I'm not going to talk to you then. It's not
Hey, Jeff, what's lobbying?
Yeah.
Lobbying is political influence through money, whether it's
private influence.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it could be. There's quasi-government organizations.
Private money influence on politics.
Yeah.
Whether that money's actually private or
it's a fancy way to say bribery, I think.
Yeah.
But
private money on political influence.
So then, okay, so if we were to run that down, what's wrong with me as a private institution going to the state and saying, I know real estate, and I think you should be thinking about it in this way, and I'm going to support financially the ones that agree with me in campaign funds. What's wrong with that? Why shouldn't I be able to do that? Like if I got 500 grand I want to spend, and I want to make sure that there's politicians that understand real estate the way I want to that understand it the way I see it and think I should do it, and I'm going to support those financially that see it the same way I do. Mm-hmm. What's wrong with me doing that?
That's where the gray line comes in, because I mean, there's nothing it's legal.
It is.
There's nothing wrong with lobbying in a court of law.
Is it moral?
I don't think it's moral.
That's the question.
Wait a minute. Why is it not moral?
It's swaying. Like
I have 500 grand of money that I want to burn,
and I don't. Let's say that.
And you need to run a campaign, because to run a congressional campaign, it's like $4 million.
Oh, sure, for the cost and stuff. So taking the cost out of it, like you have $500K to spend as a citizen. I don't, or won't. Let's say we both have $500K.
Yeah.
And
you choose not to.
I choose not to.
Okay.
Then your vote is now worth more.
Why? Why is my vote worth more? My vote worth because I still only get one vote for that guy.
But it's a vote plus sway and levy to run a narrative.
But why how can you, if I was a jury and I could say I believe this way and this guy also individually believes this way, You're telling me that I'm implanting my thoughts onto that person, and that person is only making those decisions because of what I'm giving them, or are they just operating on their own behalf, understanding things the same way we agree, and so together we're going to walk. You're going to do what you can do, and I'm going to do what I can do, and we succeed together.
I guess
how's that morally wrong?
I guess it's really not. The immorality comes from exclusive gain to you. So when there's lobbying at a level where you just happen to own a medical company and you're going to get the contracts for XYZ.
Okay.
And then there's profiteering happening. It's not just purely, I support your message and campaign, we agree. It's, I also want that bid on the contract that's $1 trillion bid. Right?
Okay.
I also
but
want
so we're going a step further.
Yeah.
We're taking it one more step further versus what is like lobbying at the fundamental, because
that's true.
You can't clip that the scenario I just described. You can't legislate that.
It's true. No, that's a really
you
good
can't
point.
say I can't do this because morally we're not doing anything illegal or morally wrong unless
we're just agreeing with money involved.
Unless it takes once they're in office, and then that's what the IG's office is for, right? Isn't that what
my point is that if maybe we can't legislate it, but if we have DOGE,
I think we can legislate it. I was just playing devil's advocate.
Oh, okay, cool. But yeah, that's a really good point, Rob, because like I think I've been looking at it like almost too simplistically now. Just sitting here at the table talking about this, I'm like, yeah, that is a little bit dogmatic. Like people can agree and people can do business as individuals and just happen to be aligned. Right. If let's say you're running for politics and I do have 500K or 500 million and I want you to run for president, like I could fund you all the way there because we do agree. We're in the same party. We have the same values. We're both Christian raised.
Exactly.
So I don't think there's anything wrong with teaming up. Mm-hmm. And if I have a resource that I can give you, that's fine. But when it's, hey, push a specific legislation and give me monopoly over, that's
why do
but even individuals don't have the necessary sway to do that, because you have to get that person has to get into the subcommittee, and then the subcommittee goes to the chair. Like the power starts to narrow down, so that
maybe that's how it should be,
chairs.
But if I lobby to a lot of people,
so this is why my argument. I think we get lost arguing about the anti-lobbying like angle. You have a battle. You're waging a battle. This to me is like, I'm going to move my pawn over to the corner of the board just in case somebody else moves in there. Like if we're going to fight that battle, it's like, that's not going to win the war. It's a distraction over here so that this thing can come into play.
You're saying there's lots of layers to it.
There's lots of layers to it. And I still think that there's some benefit to the system working in that way. But that's why I think we just need to cap campaign finance. Like why would we just not say every candidate can spend this much money on their campaign, period? And with technology and influence, like, social media influence, they can create their own channels. The cost of doing that advertising is significantly less. The only reason it's been inflated and the cost of it's going up is because social media companies like, I'll take your $2 million.
So that's one thing.
I'll take,
that's
your
a really
marketing
good
dollars.
That's a really good nuanced approach. Like
it's going to force
let's cap how much money can you lobby in a campaign? But then what about the lobbying going on like at the federal level? Like how are these people in Congress and presidential seats and everything? How are they growing so much in net worth? Like when Obama entered office, 1.5 million. When he got out of office 8 years later, like 20 million, 18, 19, 20
I know, but
million.
this is the thing is right? He wrote a book, a bestseller, and dude, you don't realize that when you're the president, it's most of it though, dude. Yeah. It's not all of it. The stock tradings.
That's how they get the money to you. It's a laundering scheme.
But people also were reading those books. Sure. I think there's a genuine ability to make that money.
When you understand too, because we've done audiobooks for people. You're not wrong, but when we've done audiobooks for people and people that do put books up, like #1 bestseller stuff, guess who bought them? Another LLC sub corporation that's just holding all the books in a warehouse. Like it's not actually in people's hands. People do that all the time to get a title. They'll lower their price for $1 a day and have their network.
It's true. It's like Hunter and his art, because he's an artist, right? Like Hunter Biden's an artist, and so he was selling $1 million pieces of art.
Yeah,
he's that good.
Wow,
these are the loopholes.
Art is money laundering.
This is what I think Doge is doing, right? They're actually taking a
Some
look
people
at
would
this.
disagree with you. The guy who bought the banana that was taped to the wall and then ate the banana, $6 million, dude. He bought a $6 million banana and ate it in front of the whole press.
Yeah. Now
That
I
was so
asked
crazy.
the question, like, I'm like, okay, that guy had $6 million to spend, but what other tax benefits was he trying to get by buying an art that he just ate?
He
right?
just ate.
You know, so that's the thing is anybody that's looked into that knows.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Right. So when Obama writes a best-selling book, I'm like, was it really a bestseller? I don't trust it. You can ask Mal too, because we have clients that wrote a book and we did their audio book, and we're like, it's good knowledge, but they're going for that title. They're gamifying the system to get a title.
Yeah.
And I think honestly, like a Navy SEAL, right? They write it, they get a book.
How
They're
do you
called
know-
Hollywoods.
How do you know somebody's been in the Navy as a SEAL?
Yeah. Oh, they got a book deal.
They wrote a book
Yeah.
about it.
They wrote a
So
book about it.
that's the thing is like everybody that's worked with SEALs, they're like,
Jocko's a good dude. There's
yeah.
some good ones out there.
There
But
are.
the point being is, if you're the president of the United States, people are going to read your book.
exactly.
Period.
If
So
you're the president of the United States, you shouldn't.
and there are politicians that are making money outside,
Yes.
whether it's through stock trading, and that's you have unusual whales, and you have the Nancy Pelosi stock trader,
87%.
87%.
87%.
That's what I'm
the
talking
Pelosi
about.
tracker's up
Yeah, the Pelosi
since they started.
I listened to that Rogan episode, which is really interesting to just see. He's genuinely trying to fight the system, which he sounds pretty legitimate, and or not. It wasn't Rogan.
Tucker.
It was Ryan Shaw. He was on Shaw.
Oh, yeah, the Sean Ryan show.
Sean Ryan show.
Yeah.
The Pelosi trades guy was on Tucker too.
Oh, maybe it was Tucker. It was Tucker. Listen, clearly you guys can hear all the podcasts that I listen to.
They're all
Well,
good.
you're a straight white male just like us, so we all listen.
Doing
to
a
the same
straight
stuff.
white male podcast to other straight white males.
Dude, I'm so straight, so white right now. And I'm so male.
You are so
all the
male.
time.
Well, nobody else is talking about it, so let's talk about it.
But yeah, the question though is, like,
Do we need a state Doge? I think we have a state Doge. I think it's just going to require people pay attention more.
yeah, well, I
It's
mean,
available. I'm looking at the budget right here. It's available. You can see where the money's going to. You have to tell people. You have to go tell
I think
your
that's all we
representatives
really
whether you like
want.
it.
We just want transparency. Like if there is like advantageous, like I can make more business deals as a former politician later.
Yeah.
Right. Or if I'm in office and I'm enriching myself off of policies that the people don't want, I think that's morally wrong. Like,
I think that's morally wrong, and it's almost impossible to weed out of the system.
Right.
I don't think anybody's
unless we
figured
have
out.
a Doge.
I don't even
that's
think
the
so.
Start of it.
I don't think so.
Well,
because the
here's the
Doge,
thing.
they had a Doge under Clinton, and
yeah.
then gone.
if
It
they're
was
all
there,
bought-
and
if
then it
they're-
was gone.
if they're all
there's
bought
no
and paid, right?
consistent way. There's no consistent way of doing it. So the only thing I really I'm looking forward to with the Doge is how do we make the changes, then legislate the changes, and keep the federal government small and empower the states, which goes back to, okay, what's our budget? What are we spending money on? What are the highlights, right? So this is the straight from the governor's office. This is investing in Utah's people, places, and prosperity, eliminating Social Security tax, doubling energy production, proactive innovation, quality service, and fiscal responsibility. Okay, so that's at the highlights of the 26 budget, right? And so you're going to get this slideshow. It's 8 slides. And then you got to go look into this and say, okay, what are we actually spending on this? Where should we actually cut money from? And at the state level, there's social services that I think we should be providing, right? I think there's going to always be bad decisions we make on a money standpoint, but sometimes we're just trying to figure out what's going to work and what's not going to work.
Yeah.
But they do
got
have
a
a budget.
question for
They
you.
got a rainy day budget. It's like over 1.6 billion in a rainy day budget,
is
which is
Utah?
great. This is Utah.
Yeah. Well, Utah's known for being like financially responsible too, right?
Yeah.
Like as
But it's also ballooned.
yeah.
It's also ballooned. From 2017, we were at a $15.1 billion budget. We're up to 30.
30, yeah.
Right.
So in
Now,
10
there
years,
was-
in less than 10 years, 8
Has there
years.
been a lot more growth? Do we have more taxpayers?
Business
Like-
growth, I think population growth kind of play into that too, right? We need more of those.
But this is the budget. You're talking about revenue items.
That's true.
Budget's money in, money out though, right? So
Budget's money in, money out.
So if population goes up, business goes up, transactions increase.
Yeah,
budget's-
state tax goes up.
Fair enough.
Or tax revenue goes up.
Fair
bu-
enough.
Budget goes up.
Yeah, that's right. That makes sense. I'm wrong.
So here's a question though too: is like, why do we even have a Doge? Right? We had one in the 90s.
We shouldn't need one.
Under Clinton. Well, that's the thing. We need transparency. So
Right,
whether
so-
it's a Doge or
So that's
another
why,
method-
I mean, Elon's a private citizen.
I think the founding fathers would disagree with you about transparency.
with government.
Keep going, but we'll come back to it.
Well, I think, I mean, Elon's a private citizen. If we bring that back down to the state level, if we have a group of people that are keeping or trying to keep the government transparent and holding people accountable, that's a DOGE.
The accountability.
Right? So where
part-
does that come from?
So
Like who's
I
going to
mean,
take that
he works for the
responsibility?
government.
yeah,
He's currently employed by the government.
and I
He's
think
he is a private individual. It's like Trump. Yeah, he's a private individual. He's just running for office.
should've-
He's with unelected.
Unelected. I should have said unelected,
Right.
not.
But I don't think people voting for Trump were unaware that Elon was going to do what he was going to do. Like that was advertised from the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
Like Elon wasn't a Republican and then he was.
Yeah, they did not hide this from
They
anybody.
didn't hide. So it's not like he snuck it in. Like, oh,
But I
by
don't
the
think
way-
people are surprised.
No, we kind of.
I think
everybody
that there's
wants this.
some news. There's some news, like the way they're shaping headlines about Elon being this billionaire oligarch. They're shaping it because they want that narrative, that negativity to come down upon him. But I don't think I think everybody knew this was coming, right? So if I'm a Republican and I'm not
wanted
happy
this.
with what it's going on, it's like you were not paying attention. Then.
Yeah, that's what
You
I'm
know what I
saying.
mean? Like-
yeah, you were well informed.
But I think most people
You knew this was coming.
knew some, at some capacity. I think
think
it was
we
been
wanted it.
so dramatic though, and so fast and furious that I think everybody's looking around like, okay, wait a minute.
I would say people that weren't as well informed as some.
Normies.
Normies. Even if you knew enough that you were like, I'm going with Trump. I'm in this camp, and then you're like, wait, am I? Oh, this is really what they were saying. Like, there's some shock value to people that were just surface level,
And then
but-
some people just like throwing dirt on Cybertrucks. You see that video?
I missed it.
It's like this, like a small movement of people throwing dirt on Teslas.
yeah,
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
the
It's
anti
hilarious.
yeah.
the anti
It's the blue
Elon.
hair people.
I've listened to, I think there's 3 biographies on Elon. Maybe there's 2. I think there's 2 biographies on Elon that are like approved by him, and I listened to both of them. And he's not like everybody else. He's not like everybody else, and he is a dickhead. Like I won't even question. Like I think it's a consensus that guy, he has a very Steve Jobs, Donald Trump personality type to where it's like my way or the highway,
I think
which
he's
is why he's so insanely productive.
100%.
And I can see people's hesitation with a personality type like that being in charge because, you know, if everybody agrees, you know, you look at if it was a democracy at Apple, Steve Jobs probably wouldn't have been there as long as he was, right?
Well, they brought Steve Jobs back
Because
because
it's like
it was shitting the bed.
Exactly.
The whole company without Steve Jobs. So,
but that's the thing is that like
any historical figure, like I'm not sure people were very chummy with Genghis Khan, even though they followed him. Like they were scared shitless of him, right? Like and he shaped history for good or for worse. It's up for you. But like
for good and for worse.
think Elon-
So I think that's why there's a lot of fear
Julius
right now.
Caesar, everybody. Like
Yeah.
Winston Churchill too. Like he was
And
a
Caesar
prick.
not as much. That was I think that I would say argue that Caesar wasn't the hammer that the other emperors were, right?
Or
like
his generals, yeah.
Like think
Or that's
Nero,
at least
like more
how
is like
they-
Nero. I think a lot of people are afraid of like the Nero types versus the Caesar type that
He
is
was messed up, dude.
Or at least that's how they wrote him into history. So we just have to go off what they wrote.
Exactly.
Nero
But we're
can't interviewed.
we're in such yeah, that's a good point, right? It's like we don't know what we don't know, and so we know what we've been fed, right? And we've just talked about how sometimes we get fed shit and we don't even know it.
Well, to kind of bring it back though, I think like what's the real thing we want is, you know, transparency and accountability is the thing. Like why is our government leaving $80 billion worth of weapons to the Taliban after we left, right? Like
We're paying them $40 million.
a week.
Was it a week or a
It was
month?
A week.
A week, $40 million.
That's what USAID was paying the Taliban. That
And
just
not
got
only
revealed.
the Taliban, but like 10 other designated terrorist organizations throughout the Middle East.
Oh man, it just goes back to show like we made terrorism a thing in the 80s. Like the conspiracy theory, because like Russia was trying to invade Afghanistan in the 80s when I was born in 88. And the Taliban,
87.
yeah, there you go. Yeah. And the Taliban, like they pushed Russia's shit in. They beat them.
Right.
But how? Oh, we had CIA operatives. We had terrorist leaders come get trained Western schooling, right? I mean,
We could also say that that was the first run post Cold War that Russia had taken on a hot war at that capacity. And
point.
historically, for all of time, Russia takes a minute to figure out how to fight a war, and then they adapt. They're not really like proactive warriors because they have a massive population, right? So they shit the bed at the beginning of everything, including their Ukraine war, right? It was a meat grinder for the first 6 months.
Well, it's the small unit leadership, and you've heard this being at a military school growing up, and from my military experience, the backbone and the decisive adaptation that the U.S. military can do is our logistical supply line, and our tech is awesome. That's the real might of our military is logistics. And then the backbone of the actual fighters is led at a small unit level. And they have a ton of autonomy.
And that's why Afghanistan was so devastating for Russia, is because
they can't do that.
And they had never really fought a war like that.
No.
They really hadn't.
I'm sure that they adapt, right? They always did. And Russia was like amazing, like what they did in World War II.
Going back to your point, though, we've helped fund these things, right?
Yes.
And so we've had these, covert operations all over the globe. And does the American people really want to continue to fund that? Now, I think there was a time to where they're like, yes, please keep the wars off my shore, and as long as I can keep my gas prices down and I can buy a house and I have food and a job,
or maybe
I don't care what's going on out there.
Yeah, we didn't know enough. I mean, think about right after 9/11, I was in 7th grade, and I remember I'm signing up, and I knew.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. I signed up in the Marine Corps in 2007. So 6 years, I was like, I'm going. And now I look back and I'm like, I was naive, right? Because looking at the evidence and all the stuff, it's like we weren't given enough information. The access to information was different. This was pre-cell phone. This was pre-podcasting.
Well, it was not pre-cell phone, but it was pre-internet in your hand.
Smartphone.
Pre-social media.
Social media. So we all had the Nokias. We were playing Snake. It was the good old
We still
days.
just had newspapers. We were getting our information from USA Today.
It felt like our world was smaller, right? And with each generation too, the access to this information hits you at an earlier age. Like our parents, they weren't worried about this stuff until they were like out of college, and we were worrying about it in like junior high and high school. And now the new generation, it's like cool to be politically active at like elementary school, right? Like they know these concepts. So the information access is so crucial to us making a decision as a people, and we all have to consciously kind of wake up and do some work, because we've just been given the information on a silver platter. I just open the paper and I read it and I go, oh my gosh, and now I talk about it at the office while we smoke indoors and talk about this receptionist inappropriately, right? Like that was the time. And we don't do that anymore, and like the information is disseminated differently, and I have access to everything at my fingertips. And so if I don't have some self-control or some emotional and maturity, and I don't take the time to read, I almost cursed on your show, there's a lot more responsibility we have, because we have, with great power becomes great, responsibility. Peter Parker, rest in peace, Ben.
Rest in peace, Uncle Ben.
But you gotta, there's some responsibility for us as citizens. So I think we want accountability, but what does accountability mean? Because they had tried a DOGE in the 90s. It probably wasn't called DOGE, but it was like,
it's basically the same thing.
Same thing.
It's the same thing. That's legitimately why it's failed at the Supreme Court level. All of the judges have basically struck it down, because we already figured this out back in the 90s. We already litigated it. This function within the executive branch already existed, and Trump's like, no, we're going to use that thing that we've already used, and we've already run it through all the judges. So that's why they can't really stop it.
So it was an execution problem then. So they had this in the 90s, but nobody was executing.
No, they did it. They did it very well, and we ran a huge surplus in the late 90s.
Wasn't this under Clinton? He made it happen.
He made it happen.
Clinton did a lot of good things and a lot of like whatever, right? People are
this is where
50-50.
the
He's infamous and not
Halliburton, Dick Cheney,
old Cheney.
They made all that money because basically he privatized the military. He cut most of it out of the military, which is why after September 11th, the freaking Marines were in 1970s Vietnam tents at the beginning. The original invasion in Iraq was just garbage materials, because we basically cut all military spending. He hatcheted a bunch of stuff. It wasn't just the military, it was a lot of different places.
Well, all the R&D and everything around the military.
But I think when he did that, going back to why Hillary Clinton ran later on, is that I think they uncovered during that process ways of moving money around to be able to operate more efficiently on a espionage scale.
So
How do we?
covert.
Yeah, if we're going to scale down the military, we need to increase the amount of money we put into CIA and Black Ops operations, right? And that's legitimately what he did. But
And you can
then
see that too.
But then that little seed just kept growing and growing and growing and growing, right?
Yeah.
It's like why these we're going to corrupt every system that we get, whether it was started good or not. We're going to figure out a way to corrupt it. And it's just taken this long for it to get corrupted.
And that's been going on since post World War II.
It's going to be going on forever.
Yeah, that's
just
where
every
like,
government.
the birth of the military-industrial complex was, which I've seen it with my own eyes. It's there. Like no people that are denying.
Describing the military industrial complex wasn't created then. Let's be honest.
Well, if you listen to Eisenhower's,
he's talking about the American military industrial complex. The war machine as an institution in the world always existed. The transfer of arms, right? Political power, military power. They just looked differently in mercenary powers, and other governments specialized in, we're the soldier nation, right? Think of like the Spartans, right? They were the warrior nations, but there was always this functional machine. It's just we in-housed it into our economy.
I think we kind of sat at the head of the table after World War II.
Yeah, exactly. We took over that war machine in-house versus going out to the mercenaries of the world.
Right. A lot of companies too that were selling product to both sides of the war, to the Germans and the Allies, I think it was Jiffy Lube.
I think early on,
Flying J, not Jiffy Lube. Yeah, Flying J oil and
Jiffy Lube.
And Volkswagen.
Volkswagen.
These things those corporate entities that kind of stayed neutral but supported both, they profiteered. I think there was like a harmonica company that sold pocket harmonicas for soldiers to both sides.
Yeah.
I'm like great entrepreneurial. Yeah.
Yeah. And that goes into,
uniforms.
This goes back into a higher conversation though. It's like that, what are these institutions? Like lobbying is an institution. And then thinking of like profiteering is a subset of capitalism.
It is.
You can't get rid of it, but it's the gross. Yeah. It's the gross.
We got to define it better.
Yeah.
That's what we hope from DOGE, right? Do we all agree? Like we hope if we're putting some entity that's auditing, we want transparency and we want accountability. So whether it's at the federal or state level, that's like the goal. Is there any other goal like you would want from a DOGE? That's all we want.
That's a good question.
The more informed we are, the better decisions as a nation we can make, and then we have the transparency.
But isn't it about saving money? We want all that, but it's like, why would Trump throw out we're thinking about giving a credit back to the Americans for the money that we saved them. It's their money. Let's give it back to them. Isn't that such a, to me, it's a very masterfully used strategy in calling a tax break or a money stipend fund, right? A stipend check, giving it to, whether we call it because it's COVID or if we call it because we're giving you your money back.
It's not money that we saved. It's money that we stopped spending.
Yeah.
Right?
It's like
that's what I'm
saving.
saying.
Yeah.
It's not coming back to us. Let's be honest. But what are they going to repurpose
even if he does,
it towards?
Even if it does come back to us, did that accomplish what we were trying to do? And that's where I'm skeptical about how this thing finishes.
Yeah, we don't need to give money back. We're trying to get the $33 trillion debt to zero.
Yeah.
And then if we can go past that.
Don't give me the money. Will you just pay the debt off of the people that we owe, please?
Right.
Can we just keep chipping away at that?
Yeah.
Or if they...
It's like when you're managing your budget, you go to the snowball effect. Can you just pay the one creditor off that we owe to? Just one of them first.
Yes.
And then go to the next one. And then
I don't
need
a new Maserati. Let's get out of debt.
Yeah, so it would be like
I don't
having...
need a $5,000. $5,000's not going to help me.
It would be having five... You have 5 credit cards and $20,000.
Well, that would be a cool option to have. Sorry to cut you off.
Well, it'd be like, okay, I'm going to pay this one, the most expensive card. I'm going to pay that off first. I still have 4 other credit cards that I got to pay. But instead of chipping away at the next one, you go down to Vegas and spend some more money.
Yeah, get the hotel you wanted.
It doesn't make any sense.
You're giving crack to a crackhead and be like, listen, this is for when you're really out of crack. This is only safe. Put this in a safe place so that when you're really out of crack, then
you're giving
you can
less
use
crack
this.
to a crack addict, but you're still giving the crack addict crack.
No, you're trying to tell them to save it. No.
Save it for later.
Or make it, hey, go make this crack make you money.
I think that's the
make
lowest
this money
common
make more money.
denominator, right?
But I think that's
the lowest.
But we give that $5,000
To me, that's a Democratic move. That's like what they're like. We want your vote next time.
So that's why I'm worried.
So
when he
some
said
more
that,
crack.
that's why I'm worried about him doing that. I'm like, what? Wait a minute. No. I get the
smart
trickle down
people-
economics, and you could
Sure.
probably give me some reason why this is going to boost the economy, but it's going to be for such a tiny little fraction of the window, and all the while the
Like the COVID
cracks
thing.
in the economy are just getting worse and worse.
Yeah. So like, I agree with you. I think if you have the option though, like everybody could probably put $5,000 to use, even if you don't need it. But a lot of people might. But the people that like lost their houses from the fires in LA, or like the hurricane victims, like where's the aid for that?
Exactly.
Right. So like, it's not like, hey, you're going to get this money back, but it's like,
Can you just use this money better, please?
Yes. And it's like, can we reduce our taxes? Like, because if we got income tax out, I think what was it, like the average American would have like another 20, 30 grand to spend per year. I can't remember the actual figure, but a substantial amount of money. And where would that go? Because house prices haven't gone down. So here's an interesting real estate thing. I saw this guy on Instagram talking about it. The old generation, the ratio, like a TV back in the day, the average cost in like the 50s was like a $500 purchase, but the average home down payment was like $5,000. So it was like, what is that? It was like 1/5 the down payment of a house. And so if you, instead of saving for a house, you bought a TV, it was considered fiscally irresponsible, financially irresponsible. But now the ratio of a TV, average cost is still the same. It's like $500, $600. But the average cost, down payment required for a house, and this is nationwide average, it was like 90 grand or 100K, like, because they're factoring all the mega blow up houses.
A simple number too to look at is the income to debt ratio of a homeowner.
That's
30% of their income is going towards their home. We're the number 2 most expensive country in the world
for housing.
So number 1's Portugal at 58%.
Right. So
and they're like rioting in the street, right?
Yes.
But we're at 30%.
That's insane.
And historically, it's been 20 to 30%, truthfully, in the way that our system's been, operated since basically the 40s, right? If you go back to like the modern housing boom. And so
the number is, the percentages stay the same, but the numbers behind
but
those
the
percents
exactly go up.
Because I was a mortgage loan officer for about 5 years, and like the debt to income ratio, but the price of a TV compared to the percentages have stayed the same. But for the inflated numbers of house values, it's like 1/30th of a house down payment now. So it's not considered, the old generation thinks that's financially irresponsible. You lazy millennials, go get your house. We're like, hey, old man, the future is now, dude. Like,
it's expensive to buy a house.
I'm going to buy a TV first.
I think you brought up another conversation though, is about like eliminating income tax. But I think there's a huge fear that people will say whenever you make big changes like that, is like, this seems like a good idea, but what am I not? What am I not thinking about?
Yeah, that's a great way to.
What's
look
the
at
second and third order consequence of this thing happening?
Let's walk it down the path a little bit. Yeah.
It's like we have a lot of debt, so let's stop making people pay the government money. Wait, what? How are we going to do that?
I guess the idea is, right, if Elon and DOGE are striking down as much as they are planning, and they continue on pay, I think they're on.
Their goal is to hit $1 trillion.
Yeah. So if they're taking out 1/3. And then we're reducing the income tax, so people are spending more money.
It's not 1/3, dude. It's like 10%. I think it's. I think his goal is 10%.
Right.
No, maybe it's 5%.
What is
$1
the
trillion?
national debt?
But the budget. He's trying to cut it out of the budget. The budget's $6 trillion, $7 trillion.
What's the national debt right now?
34 and a half.
Okay, I was thinking. I'm sorry. I'm thinking like 3 trillion. See, I can't even conceptualize a trillion, right?
Yeah. And it's gone up so fast too that you're like, no, I heard this number.
Last time
I feel like last time I checked. Exactly. It's like 3 years ago, and it went up significantly.
Yeah.
That's
crazy. I haven't even been keeping tabs on that. Holy smokes. So we're in the 30s of trillions now in debt. And so we're basically 1/30th, or, what is that? 10%, basically. Yeah, that's crazy. So it's going to take time. that changes things. But so yeah, the more budget we can strike out though in this waste and the ridiculousness that is military spending, because for those of you that are listening, if you've served or if you know people, grab your local veteran, someone in your family who's served, and ask them to tell you about how much they spend on the dumbest shit in the military.
Okay, I was way off. It's 1.7 trillion is the annual budget. For 2025, mandatory funding 1.7 trillion.
Well, it's like a medical crisis.
But the debt is like 34.5 trillion.
Right. Like it's like in a trauma situation, right? If I was to triage like a car accident victim or someone with a gunshot, the first thing is like you stop the bleeding.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the main goal is we stop the bleed of the spend.
Mike Benz on Rogan said it's a 50-year project.
Yeah. Like dismantling all of these different budgetary items. If you're looking for a nice cup of coffee and you're in downtown St. George, FS Coffee Co. That's where you're going to want to stop. It's right there on the corner of Tabernacle and Main Street in downtown St. George. So if you got a bicycle, ride it on down there and grab a drip coffee and tell them the 435 guys sent you. Going back to Utah, we have local elections coming up at the city levels, and I think it's important to have good people in those positions. But it's like those state offices and officers, now that they've been elected, like I'm hoping that there's attention brought to what's going on right now, what bills are being passed, what are the financial things, like are they just like somebody's running up a bill, and this is a real estate related House bill. Who is the name of the House bill we were just talking about? The affordable housing one. So the proposal, we can pull it up, put the link in the bio, but there's a House bill right now going through Congress in Utah that wants to require home buyers to sign an affidavit saying they will live in the property within 90 days, every single home that's sold in the state of Utah.
I think it's 151 is
151.
Is that only for primary? If I'm buying something that's not a primary residence, does that apply?
Any house, any home purchase, period. It's so
a single family residence,
condo, townhome,
anything,
any piece of real estate that was bought.
You have to live in it for 90 days.
You have to represent. No, you have to.
Gay Benyon is her name.
Yeah,
out of Cottonwood Heights.
Read it.
This bill establishes restrictions related to single family homes.
Okay, so it is.
Okay, so it's not
requires a purchaser to sign an affidavit of intent to occupy when buying a single-family home within the first 30 days the single-family home is on the market, unless the seller incurs an exigent circumstance. Whatever that looks like. Requires that the purchaser...
That just sounds like more bureaucratic.
Recorded with the county.
What it does is it cuts out all investment properties. You can't buy a second home.
Yeah,
it eliminates
unless
second homes.
Unless it's a condo or a townhome.
Unless it's a condo or a townhome.
Considered single-family residence.
Yeah, it's basically saying like opening that up and saying, what would that do?
Yeah, what is that? Is that force people into property taxes?
It's
or?
the government.
Is that a bad thing?
It's the government telling people what they can and can't buy.
Yeah, that seems
it's the government. It's the government saying we have an issue that needs solving, and how do we solve the problem? The issue being affordable housing. And families aren't able to buy single-family homes. For your first-time home, you're forced into buying a condo or a townhome, and they're wanting to open up the option for
some more listings for these people.
Less demand. I think what they're trying to do is say we're going to lower demand on single-family homes. If you're from Montana and you want a second single-family home here in Utah, sorry. You can't do that.
Or you have to
these homes are limited to the locals that want to live here, that are committed to the community. I'm not sure that's a bad thing, but what is the second and third order consequence of that?
And like, what's the time frame that it will make an impact? Because if it's like a 50-year project, we're like, is that the most important piece of legislation we can push to restrict this and that? But like, that's what I'd be interested in reading about and like hearing a discussion maybe on like a forum or something open, like city council level or whatever.
Well,
let's talk about it right now.
It's the government. Yeah. Okay, I have an 85-inch TV in my front room. I want to go buy a second TV for my other room.
No, this is food, water, and housing. A house is a requirement to live. It's not TV. It's different than that.
I mean, he's trying to craft an analogy, right?
But the analogy,
it's the government telling you what you can and can't do.
That's true. I don't like that very much.
I mean,
Jeffrey.
I mean,
But the government tells us what you can and can't do all the time.
They do.
Right.
Like speeding. You can't
sure.
drive over 30 miles an hour down Santa Clara Boulevard because you will get a ticket.
Well, then also the moral
And it's dangerous.
The moral, the moral issue is like I can
Maybe.
get behind that. But
Do
it's
we
funny.
do we like the fact? St. George. Do you like the fact
Public
that
safety.
probably 20% of the homes, the existing single family residences in the county, probably 20% in some neighborhoods, 80 to 90% of the neighborhood is vacant
because it's the snowbird
80%
effect.
of the time.
This is really applicable to St. George listeners because the snowbird effect of St. George.
It's huge.
It's huge, dude.
it's a real thing.
Yeah, I used
Took
to
me
sell
20
door
minutes to
door
go up
here.
River Road today.
I wish I had the economic demographic thing we ran for the MLS. We're going to do another episode specifically on economics and then demographics of Southern Utah.
This is some
But-
good Utah stuff.
But think about this. Think about this.
I like
if
this.
if we do pass that bill, is it going to cut out investment dollars?
Actually, dude, I see where you're going with this. Let's talk about St. George for a second. What is on the horizon for employment opportunities, growth, and we already have a high demand for housing for people coming here.
Uh-huh.
So I'm seeing some benefit here for restricting people from buying
Just single family. If they
Just
want to
single
buy a
family?
condo, if they
Yeah.
want to buy a townhome,
apartment complex, apartment,
Yeah.
or whatever. Yeah, okay. And they're building those like crazy here anyway.
Mhm.
But the single family, right? If I'm Tech Ridge,
So where do you draw the line then?
you draw it right there.
yeah, but it's
Okay,
dumb that like
I live in
the
Salt Lake.
government has to say it.
I want to buy a single family home
We
because
can't-
I have twins that want to go down to Utah Tech, and I want my twins to live in
well, that's what I think you have to
in the house,
prove.
and I want to allow my twins or whatever.
That's
I
a
want to allow
primary resident.
Yeah, so that's you can do that if you sign. There's just more bureaucratic steps to do that. I think is what the bill is saying, right?
Your twins, your daughters go down there.
So
you put them on the quick claim deed, and they are living. The owner is technically living in the
Right.
property that they're living in. There's
Because you
no
have
reason-
to
there's no
sign
reason you
that.
can't do that.
What was it? You have to
It's an
sign
affidavit
An
of
affidavit saying I'm
promising.
intending to live here as a primary resident.
Correct.
And right, so if you put them on the deed, yeah, then they are the primary resident. So that's what it is. So I guess it's okay. So what I'm understanding, it's a bureaucratic little piece of red tape that I don't agree with, but I can see the implementation of it. It's not restricting me as much if I have that situation.
How does it how does it you don't agree with it, but how does it negatively impact you?
If I'm here in St. George, right, this is a perfect example. Like I'm a business owner. We're in my living room right now that is a podcast studio, right?
Beautiful.
And what if I want
Residential
a
can be
second-
commercial, but commercial can't be residential. That's ridiculous. Can we
yes.
fix that?
Yeah, because if I could buy a commercial a commercial building and use 80% of it as studios, and we live on the top floor, like well, you could do that in Chicago. I know people that do that. There's a YouTuber that does that, and he lives downtown in a warehouse that he renovated. His whole channel is about renovations. It's dope.
Now, you as an individual owner can live in your commercial property, but I can't rent that out. I can't put residential dwellings.
I have to be the owner of the building and the owner of the business.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I can live there.
Exactly.
Oh, well, hey, maybe we should do that.
But you see what I'm saying though? Like
Yeah.
if you just going back to zoning it's a quick tangent,
Yeah,
and I don't want to
zoning
take
is
you
a
too far away
factor,
from
too.
it. But zoning is a huge factor. But how does this impact you if if anybody who buys a single family home has to live there? How does that negatively hurt? Let's start with you, and then let's go to like how does
I
that hurt
already
the
own
economy?
this home. We already own this home. So like, let's say we say, hey, we just want this house to be a studio. Every room in this house is already a studio anyway. But what if we move into a second single family? Like I'm going to go buy a second. Then I could just say, hey, I am living here.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens to this home that I already own? Like
Do whatever you want with it.
yeah, I can keep it as a business.
That bill doesn't say that you can't.
It's
you
not
can't
for
turn the
existing.
house that you're already in into
Yeah.
a rental later.
So it's only when buying a second home. In the
When
state of
buying
Utah.
a home, when buying a single family home, you have to promise that you're going to occupy it within 90 days buying it. Is it
Okay,
90?
win 90
Is that what
days.
it is?
How long? What if I
30.
occupy
30 days. 30 days.
30 days. What if I occupy
disagrees with
for
me.
6 months?
I don't know.
What's the time frame? Do I have to occupy
That's why I
for
don't
a
think the bill's
year?
going to go far, because I think it's missing a lot of like
Yeah, that seems
detail in it.
It's too vague.
It's too vague. But let's say we were
I'll
to
just go
rewrite
live
it.
there for a month and then leave and then buy another house, right?
I mean, the underlying question.
How many people would do that though too?
I mean,
right?
like some like real estate investor types maybe, but like, yeah, I wouldn't. But if I was buying a second
but a
home,
snowbird,
a snowbird would.
they just move into it for that first.
They got plenty of time.
It's my primary residence
So
for the.
is it actually going to fix anything?
But one of the underlying questions, though, is how involved do we want the government to be in housing?
Yeah,
They're already all the way involved. Like so the argument is let's not. Okay, so I'm playing a game of chess, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm in a shitty situation.
Yeah, I got you on that.
And I think I could do it this way. But I don't want to do that way. I want to do the thing we should have done 5 moves ago, and so I'm just not going to do any strategy. Right? We got to still pick a strategy to move forward. We can't go backwards.
You got to make a move. Yeah,
you got to make a move, right? And at the state level, the levers are so small because we've given them up to massive developers. Zoning is really the only real lever that we can pull, right? And so if this is a element that you function in along with zoning, maybe it does have an impact. I think if it was more detailed, let's say it was as strict as you can't turn it in rental, you're not allowed to like live there 6 months and then leave. You got to at least dwell in it for a year,
2 years, a year.
Let's just say a year, right?
Cool.
And then you could turn it into investment property or whatever. Could that lower the demand and increase the supply?
You still got to build.
They still got to build. That's true. They still got to build, but they're going to be. What are they going to be building? Because if the demand, they're going to build the density that we need, right? So maybe that function of saying, okay, well now less developers are going to build massive second homes like out in Little Valley. Dude, the parade of homes was ridiculous, dude. It was gross. I'm just going to say it. I was disgusted, bro.
We should have an episode just on that. You're a real estate agent, sir.
I know it's gross though, dude. I don't like driving around those neighborhoods and seeing those massive houses. I'm like, this is better than like a commercial, like a commercial development walking downtown with like a bunch of apartments over top. You're telling me this is better?
I had a client tell me, he's like, there's no difference between that, like one of those parade houses and some big industrial building.
They're kind of better looking.
A little bit.
Are they just building them so sparse? Like, there's no character to homes these days. Is that
no? I think the parade homes. I think they're beautiful homes. But the idea is that I look at that building. I look at a warehouse. I'm like, I don't know what goes on there. They probably like have machines in there, like building, gadgets and doodads, right? I'm like, that's what I imagine, right? So I'm like, oh, that's a functional piece of equipment there, right? Where I drive by a house, I'm like, oh, somebody's just sitting on the couch looking at their freaking phone, dude. They're not even playing in the pool.
Or the biggest, most expensive house from last year's parade
is empty.
Or
it's
like
a third house.
The family gets to use it.
Like if this bill goes through and that stops in Washington County, dude, I'm not going to say that that's a problem. I don't think that's a bad thing. Yeah. And yes, it's government telling us what we can do and what we can't do, but that's a game we're in, folks.
Well, here's a question is, let's say 20 years from now, right? So the people that are interested in these huge luxurious homes, like we'll call them estates, right? I feel like our generation, that does not appeal to me. My grandparents were really wealthy. They had this huge house that we would go over maybe once a month, and it was just like, it was empty, man. It didn't feel, so then I'd go home and I'm like, this is home, right? It's smaller, it's more manageable. And then the houses that we've had here, like we've talked at length, Mal and I are both millennials and we're like, we want a nice home, but we don't want this huge house. I don't need 6 garages. Maybe someone does for all the toys.
I think there is a market for it. Yeah. And I'm not opposed to that market.
But in 20 years.
But if you're going to build if you're going to build a McMansion. If you're going to build a McMansion,
I think at this point we can just say mansion.
And you live in it. At this point, you just say mansion.
We can just say mansion. Take the Mick off of it.
Why not McMansions? I like McMansions.
I mean, there's some, but I mean, if you're talking freaking 19,000 square feet, that's...
Yeah. That's the idea that I got a mansion through McDonald's somehow. McMansion.
You won the Monopoly game.
Like it was one of those peel-offs. Like,
dude, I played that game so much. I was so convinced I was going to win one day.
Yeah, I won a mansion with Ronald McDonald on every wall.
Here's your K1 for like $700,000 in taxes.
Every chair is the Hamburglar inside. It's like the counter's like bright red and yellow. Mustard dispensers, That's a McMansion.
That's a McMansion. So if this bill, I think if it was drafted in a way that made a meaningful impact for Southern Utah, I think I would probably be on board with it, but I think it's very vague. So looking at, okay, what are the levers within the state that we can help with housing? That's it. But I look at, are we going to do a freaking baseball stadium? I love baseball, but I'm like, come on, guys. Like, can we just focus on what's productive? What's productive? Like, how can we spend money on producing something?
Like Tech Ridge. I think that's going to be productive.
Yeah, like
up
Tech
there
Ridge.
by Zonos and all the stuff they're developing up there. That's jobs. That's well-paying jobs.
And that's the city.
That's progress.
And the private industry coming together to come up with a project that ultimately has like these compounding effects on the economy, right?
With Utah Tech being also a direct recipient
and
of that.
Dixie Tech.
And Dixie Tech and everything, right? Like, I forget that there's two now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Utah Tech is honestly, it'd be like medical technology, right? They're more of a medical, like administrative business services. Right. I think they're trying to shift into like polytechnical type stuff. But Dixie Tech is specific trade stuff, which, Jeff and I were talking about electricians, the next millionaires are going to be owning electrician.
Technical degrees. Right?
Technical degrees.
Like Mal has a bachelor's and a technical degree. So bachelor's in business.
She doesn't have any bastards, everybody.
Yeah, she's got some bastards and some degrees. But she's got a bachelor's degree in business, but then she has an audio technical degree in sound engineering. So she's like, which one's made her more money at this point? Like, obviously she's a sound engineer for podcasting and doing a great job. And like the stuff she learned in business, it just wasn't there. So technical colleges, I think that, like, what do they say? If you're an electrician or if you're in the trades, you're more likely to be a millionaire in the next 10 years if you go to trade.
So I just think of like those partnerships, right? Like how does this budget, translated into dollars, how does that dollar go to work, right? So I think the efficiency part of it is what I'm most excited about with the DOGE, like just kind of bringing it all the way back around like with DOGE, is that how can we be more efficient with the dollars that we spend? And what is the mechanism for us to utilize that effectively? Like, is the legislature, could they use a specific entity to lead them in how to be more efficient with administrative services, which is a lot of what the government does?
Here's a question for you.
Is guiding and directing administrative, right? Isn't that like what the government, like how do they get more efficient at just that?
Yeah. On that note,
and then putting the money to work.
Does the private sector need the government to restrict or lessen the restrictions for opportunity like that to come in? Because I feel like sometimes a restriction bottlenecks stuff and gets in the way, but sometimes the right restriction can allow more seats at the table, so then the economy flourishes in a different way.
I think it depends on what the underlying theme is. Like the FAA might be a good example of that. Like I'm okay with some government restriction with the FAA when it comes to farming me stuff, not crashing in an airplane.
Oh, that, yeah.
Like I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I guess it depends.
There's actually a lot of restriction around manufacturing of toilets and like the water that can go in them and the way they're shaped and stuff
definitely
like that.
Having like an infrastructure like code, I think, is okay, because we want our houses to last and work. And
right.
I think where you're headed with is that a step like this where we would limit single family, I'm just pulling it back to like the single family housing, like the single family restriction, right? You have to move into it. It's a step in the wrong direction. It's like that we should be taking this step to less regulation. Don't put more regulation on it. It was like we should fix zoning and allow the free market to determine what is the need in this area and let it do its thing.
Yeah.
Like basic needs, like safety, housing, stuff like that. That's the stuff that I think,
there should be standards.
Yeah.
Right. Like
if my house is on fire, I would, I want the fire truck to get there as quick as possible. Right.
And be able to put it out.
Be able to put it out. Right. Like
But like if you want to build a shed in your backyard, like how many hoops should you jump?
Yeah, if I have an RV on the side of my yard and my daughter wants to go live in that because her bedroom's too small because she's got a family now and she can't afford a house, so she's got to live somewhere.
Or she's just
because my neighbor doesn't like it, she should still be allowed to do it.
She should be allowed to do it, right? Like I agree with that, right? Yeah. Now if they're breaking other ordinances like defecating in the street or dumping their sewer water down the sewer, the storm drain, stuff like that. obviously that's where we've crossed the line too far.
Like if I want to camp in the backyard with my family,
Yeah.
that's cool. But like if
I want to buy 5 houses, single family houses, and not move into them, I should be able to do that.
Yeah, if you're opening up like a
Potentially.
unsanctioned shelter for the homeless in your backyard and your neighbors are complaining about the noise, that's a little different.
Yeah, those things are different.
Or
yeah.
if my neighbors, they're burning wood in the backyard every single night and it's getting into my house, like,
Yeah.
like where do you
Then
draw
also,
the line,
like, if the neighbors are cool with it, then why, it's just, there's like basic communications. Like, for example, we have awesome neighbors, but there was misunderstandings because we have an internet hub in our backyard from poor city planning back in the day and not understanding what was coming with fiber optics and blah, blah, blah. So now I got like 3 companies trying to access that for the entire neighborhood. Like a couple streets in our neighborhood need to access our backyard, like probably 70% of the time they're doing work. And so they never call us. They don't knock on our door. We work from home.
And you have
We're
dogs
here and we have dogs. And so there was one time a guy just walked in our backyard, works for the city. He just walked in our backyard and I'm sitting here with I'm eating. And this guy walks my dog, my huge German Shepherd, like he's a sweetheart, but if you walk in my backyard, he's going to look mean. So he's barking at the guy. The guy walks around, pounds on my door, and tells me what to do. And I went Marine Corps drill instructor on his ass. I lost my shit at this guy. And the words were flowing. It was a righteous anger. I was like, that's the most un-American thing you could do is come onto someone's property and demand something.
You
like
blacked
that.
out. You like came to later, and Mal's like, "Do you know what just happened?" He's like, "Did we win?"
Yeah. She's speaking to me like Scarlett Johansson. The sun's going down, big guy. And I'm like, like hulking back
Did I kill
to
him? Did I kill him?
my scientific self, right? So, like Bruce Banner. But like, yeah, I lost my shit. So then I called like 4 companies, and all I had was a logo in my mind. So I searched like all the companies there's like 4 or 5 contracted companies that do cables and stuff. So I called all 4 of them, and I found the guy, and I was like, hey, the guy's fine. I chewed him. We're good. But I want you to know, like, you cannot come in my backyard unless I just need a knock on the door or a phone call, text message. I gave him all my information. I'm like, I want to help the neighborhood.
You can communicate to me. I will help as much as I can.
You knock on my door, I can get my dogs in with a snap of my fingers. I call their names. They're well-trained animals, right? So now our neighbors, fast forward like a year, our neighbors need internet. And the companies coming out here to do this are not communicating with us. We literally work from home all day. We're here recording, we're doing whatever. If someone needs access to that internet node, they just need to ask. And so they were lying to my neighbors saying we were giving them the middle finger, not allowing them in the backyard, and because of our dogs. And because they would go look over the fence and see the dogs. And my other neighbor, who's with the sheriff's department, he's like, he vouched for me. But another set of neighbors that needed the internet, they were going to call animal control on my dogs. So you can imagine the chain of events.
Instead of just coming and knocking on your door.
But then they ended up doing that because we're like, whoa, hold up. We're neighbors. So we resolved it. But the texts were getting heated for a second, and we're like, so we're up in arms against our neighbors, and then we're like, oh, let's just talk.
Yeah.
And so once, my neighbor who saw, he's like, yeah, I've seen them multiple times look in your backyard. So that little misunderstanding, the city, they don't give a shit. They're not on the people working for the city don't care. They're going to do the minimal amount of work, right? Same thing with these, they just have a job. And so they'll literally go look over the fence, see a dog, and they're like, great, I got a 4-hour break. Because they'll put that in their notes. And so now the representative seeing the notes is on the phone with my other neighbors. Oh, looks like they're not being allowed in because of the dogs. And so now my neighbors are going to call and take like action against, like, they're going to enact a city ordinance, right? And laws, every single law written into statute it's executed on by means of force.
Yeah, through a police officer.
Yeah, there's nothing in law. Like it's a means of physical removing you, if it comes to it, if it's severe enough or repetitive.
A libertarian would call it violence.
Yeah, it is. It's physical action against another human being and force. So that's the same as violence. So
limiting that government power, I think we're bringing this all the way around.
Limiting that stuff. Like,
or the most efficient thing might be just to move the internet hub to the street.
Exactly. And so that's a whole nother thing I got to do.
But who will pay for it, Jeff? I think the neighborhood should pay for it.
No, I think
that's what the government would say.
I think the private entity that bought the rights to own internet here should do that.
Yeah, and they're going to run that number, and they're like, no, let's just keep knocking on this guy's door.
Yeah. But if I write enough petitions and whatever, because there's other people that have junction boxes that we team up and we
And
get
they're going to be like, well, no,
pitchforks.
there's an easement recorded on that property. You knew about it when you bought it. There was an easement recorded on the on
Not
the
that I
properties.
know of.
I
Unless
know.
there's not.
But if there was, yeah.
You should check it. You should check it. Say, do you have a utility easement on your property? And if not, you're like, this is no longer being used. You're going to have to move it.
So that's the
you
good
can
thing
force
too.
it.
The silver lining is as much
Jeff would do that.
red
No, I
tape
did
as
do
there
that.
is.
Oh, you did do
With
it.
an old telephone.
Yeah, but it was old. It wasn't
No telephone
functioning. And that's the
box?
thing
I-
is that
I
if it
ripped-
was working,
I ripped it out.
Yeah, if that was a fiber optic line, that'd be a little bit different.
Not my problem.
Yeah.
No,
But that's seriously.
not my circus.
Yeah, I got to check on that. So that's more information. We can arm ourselves with information and understanding these things. So if you guys are listening to the show, like keep listening. Rob is an excellent guy at getting you guys the information in St. George and Southern Utah. No one.
Thanks for the plug, dude.
Yeah, man. I like being on this show. Mal, how are we doing on time? By the way,
I think we could wrap it here. I think this is a good conversation. We're going to lead into a conversation we're going to have with Aaron Olson about Bitcoin, money. We got tariffs. There's some money conversations coming up. We want to talk about that, especially leading into
you should have
city
Zonos
elections.
back on.
Got to have Zonos back on.
Dude, they know everything about the tariffs. We're listening to their podcast. Like, dude,
Yeah.
that'd be great.
I think that's a good conversation, right? Is Southern Utah stuff, right? We want to focus on Southern Utah stuff. What's impacting Southern Utah? We hope you enjoyed this episode, guys. It's not the typical episode where we're interviewing expert. This is us three guys, local guys that maybe we don't know a lot about but we know
Actually,
something
know
about
a little.
something.
We know a little about a lot of stuff.
Yeah, if you know a little, and I know a little, and Rob knows a little bit more than a little,
Then maybe somebody listening got a little bit.
yeah, maybe a medium.
Yeah, let us
size?
know. Drop it in the comments. Did you get anything out of this? We got called grifters in the comments the other day.
Grifters.
That's how
I
you
was
know
like,
you're doing something
grifters.
right.
How do we get how is this a grift?
We're having 2-hour conversations.
What's a grifter?
That's a great question.
I feel like it could be a number.
I
of
think
things.
it's somebody who's taking money off of hype.
Oh yeah, yeah. We're out here.
Yeah, we're
chasing the virality, right?
Yeah, we're really loading up the algorithm with
Petty or small scale swindling.
small scale swindling. We're small scale swindlers, just giving people education. We hope you got something out of it. Hope you enjoyed this episode, guys. Hey, gentlemen, have a good weekend.
You too, man.
We'll see you out there, guys.
Bye.
Thanks for listening in. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. Make sure you're following us on all the social media websites. We love your support. We love the dialogue. We want to continue that going.
Find us at realestate435.com. We'd love to help you find a house here in town or help you get wherever you're going.